So this Sunday we are going to have a blockbuster fixture between Chelsea and Manchester City at Stamford Bridge. It is one of the most difficult fixtures that Chelsea have in the season. And our video today is going to try and analyze and see the preparedness and the tactics that Enzo Maresca can try to impose in this game. Now, in Enzo Maresca's press conference, he talked about the time difference that he has with his squad compared to Pep Guardiola, indicating that Chelsea are not yet ready to actually go toe-to-toe against Manchester City throughout the season and probably in this game. Now, Manchester City will be without two key players in Pep Guardiola's team, and those players will be Rodri and Phil Foden, as they returned back from the Euros quite late. And a huge player there is Rodri, because he's actually the metronome in which Manchester City team actually move, giving Chelsea a slight advantage. Now, Pep Guardiola's system and tactics actually make him favorites coming to this game, because his team are used to play the way he actually wants them to play. So let me try and pick the lineup that Enzo Maresca can pick in this game. Now, looking at the lineup, the goalkeeper that I'm going for is Robert Sanchez. Why am I going for Robert Sanchez? It's because he is the one whom Maresca prefers as a starting goalkeeper, but in my opinion, I would prefer Jorgensen to start this game because he's better at playing with the ball under pressure compared to Sanchez, who's quite shaky. Now, going into the centre-back partnership, I'm going to pick a partnership of Wesley Fofana and Levi Colwill. I believe that these two players played really well against Inter Milan. I believe the pace will be good, but I'm really suspect on how they're able to deal with the physicality of Haaland. I hope both of them are ready and capable of dealing with that. In the fullback position, I'll be going with Marco Correa and Malo Gusto. This is because of the injury to Reece James, and Cucurella is actually coming out to be one of the most important players for Chelsea. And for Chelsea to actually progress well this season, they need Marco Cucurella in that team, and therefore I'm going to pick him as Chelsea's left back. I'm going with the midfield three, and I'm going to go with all three midfielders, Caicedo, Lavia and Enzo Fernandez, and this is because we are going to face against a team that is very good in keeping the ball, and you need midfielders who are able to keep the ball and look to try and control the game. It's going to be a difficult game against a team that is very strong in midfield, and therefore Chelsea need all their three best midfielders in this team, and I couldn't know who to drop. This actually is coming because I'm not able to fit Nkunku into this team, and I'm actually picking these three players ahead of him. The front three, I'm picking Raheem Sterling towards the left, Jackson in the middle, and Cole Palmer in the right. And this is because Sterling has played really well against Manchester City, and I expect him to dribble to be better than against Lewis. And also I will be of the idea of Pedro Neto starting in the left wing, and Jackson, I like him because of his physicality, and he's also very experienced in the Premier League. I think this game is too strong for McGeough, and Cole Palmer is the first name in the team sheet. Now, this game is going to pit Maresca against his former boss at Manchester City, Pep. And Pep has explained the need of why Enzo Maresca actually needs time. And I agree with Pep in this matter. So we are going to look at the two lineups on paper and actually give a brief description of each. Now, looking at my lineup, you can clearly see that I have to make a slight adjustment in the Manchester City lineup. I'm informed that Grealish is not ready, so probably we can see Bernardo Silva playing on the wing, and probably another midfielder starting, like Matheus Nunes coming in. And most likely this is the lineup that we expect from Manchester City, and this is a strong lineup when you look at overall the lineup of Manchester City against Chelsea's 4-3-3. And I'm also going to give you my prediction of this game towards the end of the video. But first, I want us to just look at the tactical aspect of this game and how Chelsea can actually look to try and beat Manchester City. Before we start our analysis, do not forget to like, share and subscribe. So let's look at Chelsea in possession. What are Chelsea going to do when they have the ball? Enzo Maresca wants his team to build slowly from the back. And this build up slowly from the back is something that Manchester City do and are actually better than Chelsea in doing. So what we expect is that Chelsea will try to play from the back all times, and Maresca is very insistent on this. and Manchester City are actually preparing themselves to press Chelsea aggressively high and actually use the pressing traps they used in pre-season to try and finish this game earlier on, because they know very well that a player like Sanchez is not quite comfortable with the ball at his feet, and that is the player that Guardiola is going to target. So Guardiola is going to use a two-man press, and I want to give you an example of how Manchester City press. They use a man-to-man press, but that man-to-man press is very, very difficult to note because they usually try to recycle the ball towards one side of the pitch, as you can see. Now, because of this aggressive man-to-man press, Manchester City are going to use one of their forwards, either De Bruyne joining Haaland, to try and cut off the passing lane towards one side of the pitch, while the other looks to cover all the spaces in midfield, so that the centre-back has only one option, and that is to play the ball towards the fullback. And once the centre-back has the ball and draws in a press, the presser will try to press him in an angle where he can play the ball towards the fullback. The reason why I always say this is because to use the touchline as an extra defender. And once the ball is played there, they will set a pressing trap where they can actually try to win the ball off the fullback and try to progress. So Chelsea in this instance should try to have their wingers start out wide to try and hug the wide positions. And in this instance, Chelsea should try to actually rotate their backline so that they can have numerical superiority higher up the pitch. And this might happen when either Sanchez decides to step in to play as a centre-back, something that Maresca really likes. Now, when you look at this clip, you can see Leicester's goalkeeper stepping into the backline to play as an extra centre-back. And this is something that Enzo Maresca really fames in his teams. Now, this is something that we have seen also in Chelsea in pre-season. Like in this clip, you can see the position of Jorgensen stepping out and actually looking to play as an extra player in that backline. And this is something that Chelsea will really need in this game, as they want to get numerical advantage over Manchester City's aggressive high press. Now, because Manchester City will press aggressively high and Chelsea can form this pseudo back four, then Manchester City can decide to just stifle Chelsea from the initial start of play. And Chelsea can look to counter this by pushing one midfielder, most likely Enzo Fernandez, higher up, and using Caicedo and Lavia as the two players to try and give options to the team. But again, we remember one role that Cole Palmer played with Mauricio Pochettino when Chelsea faced Manchester City. And I'm going to show you that role now. So when Chelsea faced Manchester City last season, we realized that Palmer did not hug the touchline and start out wide, but rather Palmer decided to actually move into midfield, and this allowed the right back to actually be the one holding the width. And Palmer will be dropping so deep in that if the two pivots are covered, then the ball to Palmer is easy, and this enabled Chelsea to progress against Manchester City, something that we saw last season, and this created a lot of problems for Nathan Ake. I've done an analysis on that. Now, because Chelsea will be having three midfielders, automatically they will outnumber Manchester City in the midfield part of the pitch. And because of that, Chelsea need to be quite precise with their passing so they are able to actually draw Manchester City. Chelsea can decide to use the wide areas and try to create a wide overload by having players move towards this wide area, either by Gusto also dropping deep, Fofana pushing out, and this might actually create a situation where Chelsea might try to have create a 2v1 against Manchester City fullback and look to play one player in behind so that Chelsea can gain that momentarily advantage against Manchester City. Chelsea should be quite fast with their passing. They should use quick 1-2 touches so that they are able to evade this press. But sometimes Chelsea will lose the ball, and that is something that as fans you need to be ready, because Manchester City are better at pressing Chelsea. But what of the situation where Chelsea managed to progress with the ball from Manchester City's aggressive high press? Now, when Chelsea managed to progress with the ball from Manchester City's aggressive high press, this is what is going to happen. Now, Chelsea like to form this back three and a box-shaped midfield during build-up. This is aided by one of Chelsea's midfielder moving high. And in my video, I've decided that Gusto will be the one to hold the width, with Palma coming in to play in that box midfield situation, with Moises Caicedo looking to actually play as a pivot next to Romeo Lavia, something that Enzo Maresca tried with Enzo Fernandez. Remember, in that game, Gusto was not used as an out-and-out inverted fullback, but rather he was used to occupy the half-space region or to occupy the wide regions. Now, Manchester City had a way of dealing with this, and this is by pressing Chelsea in a 4-2-3-1, with one winger starting quite narrow so that they can cover the two double pivots and have a narrow front three to press Chelsea's backline. And in this instant, Manchester City managed to create a pressing trap for Chelsea, creating a dummy for them that they can play a ball to the midfield. And when the ball was played towards Caicedo, he lost it, and this actually put Chelsea in a very difficult situation. Again, in this instant, you can see Chelsea have that back three system, and Manchester City are looking to go man-to-man against Chelsea's backline. And this really made it difficult for Chelsea to actually try and play through Manchester City. Now, because Manchester City will be looking to play like this, Chelsea need their goalkeeper a lot, because their goalkeeper needs to be ready to step from his goal line and actually come forward and play as an extra centre back. This is something that Ederson does for Manchester City, and it's something that I've also seen Alisson do for Liverpool. The importance of this is to have an extra numerical advantage and have your goalkeeper being able to actually find the two pivots. The two pivots should also be press resistant to receive the ball and look to pass the ball forward. One thing I like about Romeo Lavia is that Lavia actually knows how to scan his pitch. And once Lavia receives the ball, he always knows where to pass the ball. And I fancy him to actually be the player to receive the ball under pressure. I don't know yet about Caicedo, but he knows how to shield the ball. Now, Manchester City's main aim will be trying to win this ball from Chelsea in those positions and look to try and hit Chelsea dangerously. Another thing Manchester City try to do is they try to recycle the ball towards the wide areas. That is always their aim. By closing all midfield channels through an aggressive man-to-mark system, they always try to force the opponent to play the ball towards the wide area, and Chelsea should use the wide areas to their advantage. But if they lose this wide areas battle, then Manchester City will be in a great position to destroy Chelsea. You can see here how Manchester City managed to create a pressing trap against Chelsea, win the ball in midfield, and immediately look to transition to destroy Chelsea higher up the pitch. And because of this problem, Chelsea need to be very, very careful, because Manchester City have understood that Chelsea are trying to play like them. They know that Chelsea are not quite ready to play like them, and therefore they will be ready to create those pressing traps and destroy Chelsea. Higher up the pitch, one double pivot can actually drop towards the backline and receive the ball to create a staggered build-up structure. It is something that I've seen Rodri do for Manchester City, and this can help the team actually look to play those balls in between the lines. And a player like Lavia can really do great in looking to make those passes. Chelsea should utilize the wide areas, especially down the left, by using the dribbling ability of Sterling to get the better of Lewis. Sterling is more likely to beat Lewis in a foot race and as well in when he looks to try and dribble. Now, what happens when Chelsea are actually in a settled possession and are actually looking to break down Manchester City? Because at some time in the game, Chelsea will be in this situation. Now, when Chelsea are in this situation, when they are looking to try and break down Manchester City, Chelsea should understand one thing. They should be quite precise, and I will suggest that they spread their centre-backs wide during this build-up strategy, because once they spread these centre-backs wide, they are able to pull Manchester City's wingers out of position. And this will actually create spaces for Chelsea to actually look to play the ball towards the midfield, especially to the double pivots. And the double pivots should actually look to play the balls towards the wide areas, where players like Sterling can look to take on wingers or look to slip in balls for the likes of Enzo Fernandez. The same can also happen in the right, with Malo Gusto being the one to make the half space run, with Palma looking to pull the fullback out of position. But what about the champions? What will the champions do? Manchester City know how to play this system. Manchester City are better than Chelsea in playing this system. So what will Manchester City look to try and do? in this game. So Manchester City are more likely to try and build from the back. Now, how they are going to build from the back is the way they use Ederson. And this is the weapon that Manchester City have that Chelsea don't have. And because Manchester City have a goalkeeper who's able to step out and play as a centre back is something that makes them dangerous. If Chelsea decide to press and they use that high line, now here is where Chelsea will be punished. Ederson is very, very deadly because he's able to make that pass in that space. He knows how to make that pass. And when you have a player like Haaland, he's more likely to beat a centre back in that pass. So Chelsea's front line need to be very aggressive on Ederson. Failure to be very aggressive against Ederson is actually going to result to Chelsea being destroyed. So if Chelsea decide to press high, they should press aggressively and deny all the players, the backline, the space with the ball. Or they decide to sit in a mid block. Chelsea should know how to read when the ball is in a playable position and should try to recycle the ball towards the wide areas. Now, if Chelsea are unable to press Manchester City high or Manchester City are able to play through Chelsea, then Chelsea's overall defensive position will dictate how Manchester City is actually going to build. So Manchester City are going to build with a 3-5, and maybe in some instances they might actually build with a 4, regarding to how Chelsea look to press. So Chelsea can use their 2 forward lines to try and create problems for Manchester City. But we've seen in pre-season where Pep has not used Lewis in that inverted midfield position, but rather has preferred using him in that wide channel. And Chelsea need to actually double up in those positions and try to limit the threat that this player has in this position. The fullbacks need to be very aggressive and need to be good on their day so that they're able to stop these wingers from dribbling past the team. And Chelsea also need to cover the half space areas, especially for the runs of Kevin De Bruyne, because De Bruyne is a very, very lethal player. And the Chelsea midfielders need to keep an eye on him, because if you give him time and space, he will be able to supply Haaland with the ball. Now, this is going to be a difficult game for Chelsea, but again, this is the best time to play Manchester City. So we have reached at a very interesting point in our video. And the question that a lot of people will be asking is, so what is your prediction for this game? Now, my heart tells me that Manchester City are weakened without Rodri, without Foden, and overall they are not in their mojo to actually play the way they play. So my heart is telling me that we can get a draw or a slight win. But my mind is telling me that this Chelsea backline is not ready to stop Manchester City tomorrow. I'm not confident with Chelsea's defense. I am not confident with Chelsea's goalkeeper. I'm not sure if Sanchez can play from the back under pressure. And these are some of the things that make me tilt towards Manchester City. And I'm going for a 3-1 win for Manchester City. I know this might break some of your hearts, but realistically, this is the normal result. Because when you look also at the philosophies of the two teams, when you look at the overall position that the two teams are, Manchester City are actually in a better position compared to Chelsea. And because of this reason, Manchester City are more likely to beat Chelsea in this kind of situation. So you can leave your predictions in the comment section area below. I will try and do a live stream before the game, and hopefully we are able to maybe win this game. I also will try and discuss other aspects of the game and do a post analysis on the match. So do not lose hope. It's just the first game of the season. If you lose that game, it's Manchester City anyway. It is one of the toughest games in the season, and it's actually a 50-50 game. Winning against Manchester City is usually rare. So if you lose, do not lose hope in the season. It is just Manchester City. So thanks for watching, and see you again.